Hi, I'm Jennifer Ford, and I will be taking you through my unit plan on motives for expansion. This is a plan for U.S. History, grade 11. So as you see here, I have my unit plan. I go over some of the goals. We've got historical thinking, argumentative writing, historical writing, and analysis of point of view as my upfront goals. And then I have a long list of objectives. This is kind of the objective for each lesson broken down, but listed in bullet point form. And then I have my essential questions. And the main essential question is, was American foreign policy during the 1800s motivated more by realism or idealism? This is the main question we're focusing on for the unit. The other questions are more sub-questions that will relate to the main question, but this main question is what I want my students to take away from the unit. So if we go down further, I'm going to look at the performance tasks that we're going to do. Now, performance tasks for me really are more of formative or pre-formative assessments. So we're going to have a CEL paragraph, which is an argumentative paragraph. We will have several do-nows, and then for the summative, we will have a summative final exam at the end of the unit, and they will also have a 5-paragraph essay, which is in the wrong portion. It should be down there. So the formative assessments are more like the performance tasks, and the summative are really going to be the final exam and the 5-paragraph essay. The main higher order of thinking students will be asked to do is analysis of primary and secondary sources. This unit is very heavy on primary and secondary sources. We are analyzing these particularly as it relates to point of view. So here is a bullet point of each topic of each lesson plan, as you see. There are 10 lessons, and this is just kind of a quick hit of each lesson. And then you see here are my Common Core standards, and then we get into what each lesson is going to look like. So I've broken it down kind of with learning objectives on this side and what is going to be happening on this side. So this is really the introduction to motivations behind expansion. We're talking about motivations in personal decision making, and this is going to be their introduction to realism versus idealism. They're going to read the introduction to the chapter, and then they are going to do a handout based on that. And then for homework, they are going to have their CEL paragraph that they will need to do in order to kind of get them into the mindset of arguing what do we make foreign policy decisions on. The next day we will go over their CEL paragraphs and we will discuss it. A CEL paragraph stands for just claim, evidence, and link, which really is what claim are you making, what is your argument, what is your evidence, and what are you using to link this all together? How are you analyzing this? Okay. So lesson 2 is really going over what the final essay is going to be about, and the final essay is addressing that essential question, is why did we expand during the 1800s? And we're spending the entire lesson really going along and following down what's going to be in this essay. I've found that my students really need a lot of direct instruction on what's expected out of an assessment. So then day 3, we're comparing 2 primary sources about the Spanish-American War. These are 2 different points of view, and what we're looking at is how these points of view shaped public opinion. Then lesson 4 and 5 are put together. We will be doing an intro on the Spanish-American War as a video, and then we will have a class discussion, and then students are going to learn about yellow journalism. And in yellow journalism, what we're really talking about is the sensationalization of media and what effect that has on the public. Day 6, we're looking at the USS Maine, how the explosion of the USS Maine affected the Spanish-American War. Day 7, we're talking about the white man's burden and how white Americans and white Europeans believed that they needed to Americanize and civilize those in the South Pacific and in other nations. We'll be reading The White Man's Burden by Rudyard Kipling. Day 8 is political cartoons that we will be reading about the U.S. involvement in the Philippines. We will be reading those to understand the perspective of those that were pro-expansion, pro-imperialism, and those that were against imperialism. Day 9 is they will be doing independent work on their essays. And then day 10 is their final. So now that I've kind of shown you my whole lesson plan, what I'm going to do is we're going to look at some of the resources. So here are the resources for lesson plan 1. So we're looking at the graphic, this is a primary source. The primary sources for my first lesson. Okay, so this is one from the New York Journal and one from the New York Times, and they'll be reading those and comparing them. And then we've got, oh, this is the same. We've got the PowerPoint that I will be using. So this is a calendar that they are going to have. This is their due now, thinking about motivations behind important decisions. And this is a spectrum that we will be looking at for the entire unit, which is decisions made based on realism or are they based on idealism? And the students will be expected to copy down these two definitions. So going back, let's look at some of the resources. Let's do lesson 3. So lesson 3 has primary sources, a graphic organizer, and a PowerPoint. Okay, I'm going to show you what one of my graphic organizers looks like. These are from Sheg that I use. I kind of use Sheg and modify it to work the way that I would like it to work. So we're looking at 3 primary sources and looking at those sources to decide why the United States invaded Cuba. So that's what this lesson is on. And then if let's go to another lesson. Let's do lesson 9. This is the directions for the essay, and I wanted to show you this because this is something that I made specifically for this unit, and this is their final essay, and it was U.S. foreign policy motivated more by realism or idealism? And I have very specific requirements for what I'm looking for, and I have a formatting requirement and a rubric that they can use for their essay. I'm really learning that they need more guidance when I give assignments. And then on top of that, I used a term list, which is really to kind of help guide them in what terms they should be using. And for my IEP students, they also got an outline with sentence starters. Okay, so let's look at lesson 7. Lesson 7 didn't have any handouts, so it just has a PowerPoint. So you're just looking at different reasons why we entered into the Philippines and why we expanded. And this was really the biggest breakdown that I did for why we would expand and why we would go forward with imperialism. And the main reasons I said was foreign investment, trade and commerce, military strategic interest, religious and missionary interest, and social Darwinism. So this is kind of the main reasons I highlighted. So let's look at one more. Let's do lesson 6. Lesson 6 was a video. It was a documentary. I'm not going to play it. But it was a documentary on the Spanish-American War that I thought, though it was a little old, was really fitting to show them, especially because for their paper, I wanted them to utilize multiple sources. So that's how I set it up. We can do lesson 8. Lesson 8 is actually one of my favorites because of the political cartoons. This is the handout that they used to do like the source, the context, and what the overall message was from the political cartoons. And then if we look at this, this should have yes, here are the political cartoons. They were analyzing each of these political cartoons, and I find political cartoons just to be really interesting to analyze. And I think this was a really successful lesson for my students. And my favorite political cartoon that we looked at, um, let me see if I can find it, is this one. This one that my students had a lot of difficulty understanding because they'd never seen um, this image of justice as a woman. And it's this idea that we shouldn't be civilizing other countries until we civilize our own country, which is, she's pulling back the curtain and showing that the United States is having a problem with lynching at this time. So this was a really effective lesson and really great for showing different points of view when it comes to imperialism. And I think that's important for students to understand, is that that history has multiple points of view. So that is my unit plan. We just finished the unit this week and the students sat their final. I hope this is informative, and I thank you for listening.